In the great city of Telerith Prime, where hundreds of alien species lived and traded, there was a special place called the Interstellar Adoption Network. It was a center where children without homes could find new families across the stars. Most of these children came from distant planets, but one little girl was different. She was the only human child there. Her name was Elira. Elira was small and fragile-looking, with bright eyes full of questions and wonder. But what made her special was not just her species, it was how she saw the world. She smiled at strangers, told stories about Earth, and dreamed of places no one else knew. But many aliens found her strange. They didn't understand why she laughed at the smallest things or why she cried when someone was sad. To them, she was a puzzle. Since she was a baby, Elira had been passed from one alien family to another. At first, the Kintari, a tall blue-skinned species known for their logic, wanted to keep her. But they soon returned her because she was too noisy and didn't follow their quiet ways. Then the Vesra, a gentle species of four-armed beings, tried to teach her their language, but Elira missed Earth songs and stories. They said she was too lonely and gave her back. Every time she was adopted, Elira tried her best to fit in. She learned to speak different alien languages, ate strange foods, and even tried to wear their clothing. But her heart always ached for a home where she could just be herself. The adoption network's halls were full of other children, some waiting to be chosen, others preparing for new worlds. But Elira was the only one who had been adopted and returned more than 30 times. Her file was thick with notes and explanations from each family who had tried and failed. The AI caretakers, cold and logical machines, began to see her as a problem. They whispered to each other about closing her file. Elira didn't understand why she was always sent away. She was kind, helpful, and brave. She made friends with the other children and told them stories of Earth, the blue sky, the green forests, and the endless oceans. But no one stayed long enough to hear them all. One evening, after another family returned her, Elira sat alone on a small bench by the window. The stars shone brightly in the dark sky of Telerith Prime. She pressed her hand against the cool glass and whispered, "Why am I so hard to love?" Suddenly, a soft voice came from behind her. "Because you have a heart too big for most," said a small alien with sparkling eyes. It was Zella, a young care worker who had watched Elira for years. Most families want children who fit perfectly, like pieces of a puzzle. But you are your own puzzle. Elira looked at Zella and smiled weakly. "Do you think I will ever find a real home?" Zella crouched down and took Elira's hand. "I believe you will. Sometimes the universe takes time to find the right place for stars to shine." The next morning, a new message arrived at the adoption network. A human explorer named Jonah Marrow was visiting Telerith Prime. Unlike the others, he was not there to adopt a child. He was looking for a rare part to fix his ship. But when Jonah heard about Elira, his interest grew. He had traveled many stars and knew the loneliness of being far from home. As Jonah walked through the halls, Elira watched him from a distance. There was something different about him. He didn't look at her with curiosity or pity. Instead, he smiled and nodded, as if he understood what it meant to be lost. The AI caretakers warned Jonah that Elira had been returned many times. But he only said, "Sometimes the best things are the hardest to keep." Elira's heart lifted for the first time in years. Maybe this time things would be different. Elira's days passed slowly in the bright halls of the adoption network. After another family returned her, she felt more tired than before. She had learned to hide her sadness behind jokes and quick smiles, but inside she felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. One morning, a new group of visitors arrived. They were the Veskar, a species made of shining crystals and light. They moved like dancers and spoke with voices that sounded like music. The Veskar were known for their kindness and beauty, and many hoped they would finally be Elira's forever family. When the Veskar first met Elira, they admired her curiosity and her bright, laughing eyes. For a time, Elira thought she had found a home. She learned to move with their graceful steps and tried to match their quiet, melodic speech. But the Veskar wanted everything to be perfect. They expected peace and calm all the time. Elira's laughter, Her loud questions and her bright emotions did not fit their quiet world. After only a few weeks, the Veskar brought Elira back to the adoption network. They said she was too loud and too restless for their kind. Elira was heartbroken. She didn't understand why being herself was never enough. She returned to the halls feeling smaller than ever. The other children tried to comfort her, but many had heard the same story, returned again. Even the AI caretakers, machines designed to be kind, seemed less patient with her now. Elira sat alone in the corner, looking out the window at the stars. She wondered if anyone in the entire universe could want a child like her, a human full of noise and feelings and dreams. Just then, the door to the adoption room opened, and a tall figure entered. It was Jonah Marrow, the human explorer who had come to Tellerith Prime for a ship part. He looked around the room, his eyes sharp but kind. Elira felt her heart beat faster. She wasn't sure why, but something about Jonah felt different from all the others. Jonah walked over to the AI caretakers and spoke quietly. "I'm not here to adopt a child," he said. "I'm here for parts, but I want to meet Elira." The caretakers looked surprised. "She has been returned many times. It is not recommended." Jonah smiled softly. "Sometimes the hardest stories are the most important to hear." The caretakers led Jonah to where Elira sat. When she saw him, Elira stood quickly, her eyes wide with surprise and hope. "Hello," Jonah said, kneeling to her level. "I'm Jonah. I heard you're quite the adventurer." Elira laughed, a bright sound that filled the room. "I'm just trying to find a home." Jonah nodded. "That's the hardest quest of all. But maybe you don't need to find a home. Maybe you need to build one." Elira looked at Jonah, puzzled but curious. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a problem to be solved or a puzzle to be fixed. She felt like a person. Over the next few days, Jonah stayed at the adoption network. He didn't rush or ask questions that made Elira feel strange. Instead, he shared stories of his travels, of stars that sang, planets made of crystal forests, and creatures that changed shape with the seasons. Elira listened closely, her heart opening a little more each day. She told Jonah about Earth, a place she barely remembered but loved deeply. The blue sky, the warm sun, and the feeling of running barefoot through grass. Jonah showed her small pieces of his ship, tools and gadgets that sparked her curiosity. She helped fix a broken device, her hands steady and sure. For once she felt useful. One afternoon, as they sat under the giant glass dome of the adoption network, watching a meteor shower, Elira asked quietly, "Why do you want to stay here? You could leave any time." Jonah smiled at the falling stars. "Because sometimes the best parts of a journey are the people you meet along the way." Elira felt a warmth spread inside her. Maybe Jonah was right. Maybe she could build a home, not just a place, but with someone who understood her. But their time together was short. The Galactic Council, which governed the adoption network, had rules. A human child like Elira, adopted without official approval, could not stay. A retrieval squad was sent to take her back to the network. Jonah knew they had to act fast. "I won't let them take you away," he promised. "We will find a way." Elira looked up at him, eyes full of hope and fear. "But what if no one else wants me?" Jonah took her hand. "I want you. And sometimes wanting someone is the bravest thing you can do." That night they made plans. Jonah would try to get official permission to take Elira with him on his ship, but the council was strict, and time was short. As Elira lay in her small bed, staring at the stars, she felt something new, a spark of courage. She was tired of being returned, tired of being told she was too different. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to fight for her place in the stars. And for the first time in a long time, she dreamed of a real home. The day Jonah Marrow decided to take a closer look at the adoption network's waiting halls, Elira was restless. She had been drifting through her days, trying to be quiet and invisible, but the sadness inside her was heavy. She didn't want to be another child who was passed from hand to hand, never really belonging. Jonah had promised he would try to find a way for her to stay with him. But first he needed to understand her better. He wasn't just a visitor anymore. He wanted to be someone she could trust. As Jonah moved slowly through the corridors, Elira stayed hidden behind a stack of crates filled with supplies for the alien families. She watched him with curious eyes. He seemed different from all the others. There was no pity or awkwardness in his gaze, only kindness. Suddenly, a loose crate wobbled and tipped, sending a small set of tools clattering to the floor. Elira jumped, startled. Jonah looked down at the fallen tools and then at the small girl peeking from behind the crates. "Careful," Jonah said with a gentle smile. "You almost made a whole toolbox take a trip." Elira stepped out, brushing dust from her clothes. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Jonah knelt to gather the tools. "No harm done. What are you doing hiding back here?" Elira shrugged. "I like quiet places. People don't bother me here." Jonah looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe because you want to watch and not be watched?" Elira blinked. "How did you know?" Jonah chuckled softly. "I've been watching the stars long enough to learn a few things about people." For a moment they just looked at each other, the busy noises of the adoption network fading around them. Then Elira, feeling braver, stepped closer. "You're not like the others. You don't treat me like a project or a problem." Jonah smiled, again. "I'm not here to fix anyone, I just want to understand." Elira's heart fluttered. No one had ever said that to her before. Jonah stood and extended his hand. "Come with me, I want to show you something." Elira hesitated but took his hand. They walked through the busy halls, Jonah explaining the small machines and parts he carried with him. Elira's eyes sparkled with interest. She loved to learn, and Jonah seemed patient and eager to teach. They reached a quiet room filled with strange gadgets and glowing screens. Jonah picked up a small device and handed it to Elira. "This is a star map," he said. "It shows where we are in the galaxy." Elira looked at the tiny lights and lines, tracing the path with her finger. "So many stars." Jonah nodded. "Each one is a world with its own story. And maybe, just maybe, there's a place where you truly belong." Elira smiled, a real, full smile for the first time in weeks. Suddenly, the calm was broken by a sharp voice over the network's loudspeakers. "Attention. Unauthorized companionship detected. All personnel must report to the central hall immediately." Elira's smile faded. Jonah's eyes hardened. "They've noticed I'm here with you," Jonah said quietly. "We need to be careful." Before Elira could ask why, a group of officials appeared at the door. The head caretaker, a tall alien with a stern face, spoke. "Jonah Marrow, your presence here is irregular. Elira's placement is under strict review. You are not authorized to remove her from the facility." Jonah met the caretaker's gaze steadily. "I am not here to take her away. I want to help her find a place where she belongs, somewhere she can be herself." The caretaker shook his head. "That is not how the rules work. Elira must remain here until a suitable family is found." Elira felt a rush of fear and frustration. She looked at Jonah, her silent hope flickering. Jonah took a deep breath. "Then I will stay with her. I won't let her face this alone." The caretaker hesitated, clearly unsure what to do. Jonah turned to Elira. "Would you like to come with me, just for a little while?" Elira nodded quickly. "Yes." The caretaker finally stepped back. "Very well. But know this. This is temporary and will be reviewed." As Jonah and Elira left the room, she felt something new inside. A small seed of hope. Walking side by side down the hall, Jonah looked down at Elira. "You're not just another child, Elira. You're a star in your own right. And stars are meant to shine, no matter where they are." Elira squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Jonah, for seeing me." Jonah smiled. "No, thank you for letting me see you." That night, as they prepared to leave the adoption network, Elira stared out the window at the vast galaxy. For the first time, she didn't feel lost. She felt like she belonged, somewhere, somehow. And maybe with Jonah, she would find a home among the stars. The Starling's Grace was unlike any place Elira had ever been. Jonah's ship was small but full of life. A cozy world filled with blinking lights, humming engines, and soft corners where stories were told and dreams grew. As they floated gently above Tellerith Prime, Elira looked around with wide eyes. This was her first real chance to feel at home. Jonah showed her the ship's many rooms. There was the cockpit, where stars zipped past like glittering beads on dark fabric. The engine room was warm and noisy, filled with tools and parts that glowed faintly with energy. In the small kitchen, Jonah brewed strange-smelling drinks that reminded Elira of Earth's forests. "Welcome aboard," Jonah said with a smile. "This ship is more than just metal and wires. It's a home." Elira grinned. For the first time, in a long time, she believed it. Days passed with laughter and learning. Jonah taught Elira how to fix small machines and navigate using the stars. She told him stories of Earth, the way rain smelled, the sound of waves, and the taste of fresh fruit. Jonah listened with interest and sometimes added stories of his own, tales of distant planets with skies that glowed green, and creatures that sang under moons no one on Earth had ever seen. Elira's heart felt lighter. She had never thought a home could be more than a place. It could be a feeling, but the galaxy was never calm for long. One evening, while Elira was tracing patterns on the navigation screen, the ship suddenly shuddered. Lights flickered, alarms began to ring, and the steady hum of the engines turned into a worried whistle. Jonah's face grew serious. "We're caught in a quantum storm," he said. "These storms are rare but dangerous. They can scramble the ship's systems and leave us drifting." Elira's eyes widened. "What do we do?" Jonah moved quickly, flipping switches and checking controls. "Hold on. I'll try to steer us through." The Starling's Grace rocked, like a small boat on a wild sea. Outside the windows, flashes of light danced, colors twisting and swirling in the blackness of space. The storm was beautiful and frightening all at once. Suddenly, the ship's controls flickered and stopped, responding. Jonah's face tightened with worry. "The storm is blocking the system. I can't steer." Elira felt a rush of fear, but then remembered the lessons Jonah had taught her. She leaned forward and touched the controls, trying to make sense of the strange symbols blinking before her. "I think I can help," she said quietly. Jonah looked at her, surprised but hopeful. "Go ahead, Elira." With careful fingers, Elira pressed buttons and adjusted dials. She used what she had learned, not just from Jonah, but from years of watching and trying to understand the strange worlds around her. Slowly, the ship's engines hummed stronger, and the controls began to respond again. "You're doing it," Jonah said, his voice full of pride. Elira smiled, her heart pounding. Together, they worked to guide the Starling's Grace through the storm's wild energy. After what felt like hours, the alarm stopped. The stars outside returned to their steady glow. The ship was safe. Jonah looked at Elira with wonder. "You saved us." Elira laughed, a sound full of relief and joy. "I guess all those years of being passed around taught me something." Jonah nodded. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met." That night, as the ship floated calmly once again, Elira lay on a small bunk and stared out the window at the endless stars. "I was scared," she said softly. "But with you here, I felt brave." Jonah sat beside her, looking at the sky. "That's what home does. It gives you courage." Elira smiled, feeling a warmth she had never known before. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just a child waiting to be chosen. She was part of a team, a family, and the Starling's Grace, this little ship, was her home among the stars. After the storm, life on the Starling's Grace felt calm and full of promise. Elira and Jonah grew closer each day, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments under the endless stars. But far away, in the shining halls of the Galactic Council, trouble was brewing. News of Jonah's unauthorized companionship with Elira had reached the council's ears. For years, strict rules had controlled the adoption of children, especially humans like Elira. The council worried that allowing her to stay with Jonah could break their carefully planned order. One morning, while Elira helped Jonah clean the ship's tools, a sudden message interrupted them. "This is a transmission from the Galactic Council," the ship's computer announced. "You are required to present yourself and the child Elira to the council chambers on Tellerith Prime. Failure to comply will result in immediate retrieval by the Galactic Security Force." Elira's heart sank. Jonah's jaw tightened, but his eyes stayed calm. "We knew this day might come," he said softly. Elira swallowed hard. "What will happen to me?" Jonah took her hand. "We'll face this together, no matter what." As the Starling's grace landed back on Tellerith Prime, the air felt heavier than before. The streets were crowded with alien faces, some curious, others cold. Jonah held Elira close as they made their way to the great council hall, a building of shining crystals and floating lights. Inside, the council chamber was vast and filled with species from all over the galaxy. The council leaders sat on high seats, their eyes watching every movement. The head of the council, a tall being with silver skin and eyes that shimmered like stars, spoke first. "Jonah Marrow, you have broken the laws of the Galactic Adoption Network by taking Elira without approval," the leader said. "This child has been returned many times. She is not suited to travel with you." Jonah stepped forward, voice steady and strong. "Elira is not just a child to me. She is someone with hope, courage, and a spirit that cannot be measured by your rules. She belongs with me." Elira watched as Jonah spoke, feeling a fire growing inside her. It was her turn now. She stepped forward, her voice clear. "I have been passed from family to family. No one wanted me because I was too different. But Jonah saw me. He didn't try to change me. He helped me believe I could belong somewhere." The council members whispered among themselves. Some looked moved, others skeptical. Elira took a deep breath. "I am not broken. I am not a problem. I am human, and I want to be part of this universe, not just a visitor." A council member with soft green eyes leaned forward. "Your words are powerful, child. But how do we know this is not just a moment of emotion?" "What about her safety and well-being?" Jonah answered quickly. "I have traveled the stars longer than most. I know the dangers and the loneliness. Elira is brave, smart, and strong. Together we will protect each other." The head of the council paused, then said, "We will hold a vote. Your request to remain together will be considered. Until then, Elira will stay under our care." Elira's heart sank again, but Jonah squeezed her hand, giving her strength. For the next few days they stayed in a waiting area, hoping for a good decision. Elira met children from many worlds, all waiting for their own homes. She shared her story with them, and they shared theirs. One night, Jonah and Elira sat under a dome that showed the galaxy's stars. Jonah whispered, "No matter what happens, you have changed this place. You made them listen." Elira smiled. "I want to keep trying. I want to make a place where no one is returned just because they are different." Jonah nodded. "We will. Together." Finally, the council's decision arrived. The vote was close, but the leaders agreed to give Elira and Jonah a chance to prove that family was more than rules. Elira felt tears of joy and relief. For the first time, she was not just a child waiting to be chosen, she was part of a family that believed in her. As they left the council hall, Elira looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the universe was bigger and kinder than she had ever imagined. And with Jonah by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The day of the Galactic Council hearing arrived like the calm before a storm. Elira and Jonah stood together outside the towering council hall, its shimmering walls reflecting the light of distant stars. The hall was filled with beings from many worlds, each with eyes full of curiosity, judgment, and sometimes hope. Elira felt her hands tremble, but Jonah's steady grip gave her strength. "This is your moment," he said softly. "Speak from your heart." Inside the chamber, the council's leaders sat high above, their faces unreadable. A great silence filled the room as Elira stepped forward to speak. She looked out at the crowd and took a deep breath. "I am Elira," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I am human. For many years I was passed from family to family, from one world to another. Many times I was returned because I was different, because I laughed too loudly, asked too many questions, or showed too much feeling." A murmur spread through the audience, but Elira did not falter. "I was told I was a problem, that I did not belong, but I am not broken. I am not a mistake." She paused, feeling the weight of her words. "I want to belong not just to a family, but to the universe. I want to show that being different is a strength, not a weakness." Jonah stood beside her, proud and silent. The council leader, a tall figure with eyes that glowed softly, leaned forward. "You speak with courage, child, but this council must consider not only feelings but also safety and harmony. How can we be sure your place with this human explorer is truly the best for you?" Elira looked directly at the leader. "Because Jonah sees me, not as a problem to fix, but as who I am. He trusts me and I trust him. Together, we are stronger." A member of the council rose, his skin shimmering like liquid silver. "Your words are compelling, Elira, but the galaxy is vast and complex. Different worlds have different needs. Are you prepared to face challenges as a human among many species?" Elira nodded without hesitation. "I am ready. I have faced loneliness, fear, and rejection, but I have also faced hope, friendship, and love. I will carry all of this with me." The council chamber was silent for a moment. Then another voice spoke, a young delegate with gentle eyes. "Elira's story reminds us why we must rethink our ways. Perhaps it is time to look beyond old rules and see the heart beneath." The head of the council smiled slightly. "This hearing has been unlike any before. Your courage has moved many here." After a pause, the leader spoke again. "We will vote on a new approach, one that values true belonging over strict rules. Elira will remain with Jonah, and together, they will help guide the future of the Galactic Adoption Network." Relief and joy flooded Elira's heart. She had spoken her truth, and the universe had listened. As they left the chamber, Jonah wrapped an arm around Elira's shoulders. "You changed their minds. You changed the galaxy." Elira looked up at the stars shining through the hall's great windows. "Maybe the universe is bigger and kinder than I thought." Jonah smiled. "And with every star we reach, we make it brighter." In the weeks that followed, Elira and Jonah worked with the council to design a new way for children like her, children who were different, who did not fit old patterns, to find homes where they could truly belong. Elira helped teach others about the beauty of being human, the laughter, the feelings, the hope, and she saw the stars not as distant lights, but as friends guiding her way. For the first time, Elira knew that home was not just a place, it was a family built on trust, love, and courage, and in the vastness of space, she was finally free to shine. The days after the Galactic Council's decision felt like a new beginning. Elira and Jonah were no longer just wanderers lost in the vast galaxy. They were family, a team with a shared mission. The Starling's grace hummed softly as it prepared for another journey, carrying with it the hopes of many. Elira looked out the ship's window as Tellerith Prime grew smaller behind them. The stars sparkled like diamonds, each one a promise of adventure and new friends. She felt a warmth inside her chest, a feeling she had searched for all her life. This was home. Jonah smiled beside her. "Ready for the next chapter?" Elira nodded. More than ever. Their mission was clear. They would travel from planet to planet, not just exploring the stars, but helping change the way the galaxy saw children like her. Children who were different, who didn't fit the old rules, but who deserved love and belonging. At their first stop, They visited a world called Kinara, a place where colors changed with the seasons and the air smelled of wildflowers. There, Elira met children of many species, all with their own stories of finding or losing homes. Elira shared her journey, her voice steady and full of hope. She spoke of Jonah's kindness, the storm they survived together, and the day she stood before the council and changed their minds. The children listened, their eyes wide with wonder. Some had never heard such a story before. One small Kinnaran girl reached out and took Elira's hand. "You are brave," she said simply. Elira smiled and squeezed her hand. "We are all brave when we find someone to believe in us." Jonah watched with pride. This was why he had come to Tellerith Prime, to find more than a ship part. He had found a family, and together they were creating a new kind of home. As they traveled, Elira helped design a new program for the Galactic Adoption Network. It was different from before, focused on understanding each child's unique needs rather than fitting them into old patterns. The program welcomed differences, celebrated strengths, and looked for true connections. The council supported the changes, inspired by Elira's courage and Jonah's dedication. Slowly, the galaxy began to open its arms wider. One night, as the Starling's Grace sailed past a shimmering nebula, Elira sat beside Jonah in the quiet cockpit. "Do you think we will ever stop traveling?" she asked. Jonah smiled. "Maybe one day we will find a place to stay for a while, but the stars will always call to us." Elira leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you answered my question that day, when I was hiding behind those crates." Jonah laughed softly. "I'm glad I found you, Elira. You taught me what home really means." Together they watched the glowing colors of the nebula drift past, feeling the endless possibilities before them. Elira knew that no matter where the stars took them, she was no longer alone. She had found more than a family. She had found a purpose to shine brightly, to welcome others who felt lost, and to build homes among the stars. And so, the Starling's Grace sailed onward, carrying a girl who had once been returned, too many times now a beacon of hope for the entire galaxy. For Elira, and for every child like her, the universe was finally home.